All right, let's dive into a really fascinating thought experiment from the research firm Citrini. Now, this isn't a prediction, okay? It's a fictional memo from the near future that explores a potential crisis. And it's a pretty compelling look at what could happen if all our hopes for AI actually come true.
This right here is the central question that kicks this whole thing off. It's such a fantastic, counterintuitive idea. We've all been so focused on the massive upside of AI, but what if that very success has the seeds of a major economic disruption baked right into it? It just sets the perfect speculative tone for the journey we're about to take.
So to really get this scenario, we have to do a little bit of time travel. I want you to imagine it's June 30th, 2028. We are in the middle of a pretty significant global crisis, and we're looking back trying to figure out how on earth did we get here?
And what's just shocking here is the speed of the collapse. In this fictional 2028, unemployment has skyrocketed past 10%. The S&P 500 is cratered, down 38% from its peak just 2 years before. It really shows how quickly a problem that seems contained can spiral into a full-blown crisis.
So, where did it all begin? Well, the crisis didn't just pop up everywhere at once. The very first domino to fall was in a single, absolutely critical sector of our modern economy, the software industry.
This timeline shows you exactly how it started. In late 2025, AI coding agents suddenly get way better. A single developer can now basically replicate a whole software-as-a-service product in just a few weeks. The problem was, companies had already locked in their 2026 budgets. So by the middle of 2026, procurement managers started asking a really dangerous question. Hey, why don't we just build this ourselves?
And boom, this is the turning point. This fictional headline from October 2026 shows the exact moment the market woke up and smelled the coffee. ServiceNow, a massive, essential company, was supposed to be safe. But its growth just slammed on the brakes. And the problem wasn't just competition. Its own customers were using AI to lay people off, which meant they needed fewer ServiceNow licenses. The disruption was feeding on itself.
So the crucial point here is that this wasn't like disruptions we've seen before. Think about Kodak, right? They resisted digital cameras, and they died a slow, painful death. In this new model, the companies most threatened by AI, like ServiceNow, became its most aggressive adopters. To survive, they had to cut costs using the very technology that was coming for them. Each company made a rational decision that, when added together, just accelerated the entire catastrophic spiral.
Now, the disruption didn't stay contained in the software world. No, it metastasized. It began to attack a really fundamental part of the modern consumer economy, the whole business of intermediation.
This is such a key concept, habitual intermediation. Think about it. Trillions of dollars of value are built on the simple idea that we humans, well, we're busy, we get tired, we stick with what's familiar, and we don't always hunt for the absolute best deal. We just accept a little bit of friction in our lives. But what happens when the one making decisions for you is a machine that never gets tired?
And just like that, entire industries built on that friction are suddenly vulnerable. Your AI agents running 24/7 for you start optimizing everything. They're reshopping your insurance every single year, finding the best travel deals without needing a big booking site, and even finding ways around those 2 or 3% interchange fees on every credit card swipe.
Let's just look at the DoorDash example because it illustrates this perfectly. An AI agent doesn't have a favorite app on its home screen. It just checks every single option, DoorDash, Uber Eats, and dozens of new little competitors to find the absolute lowest fee and the fastest delivery time, every time. The entire business model, built on being the default choice, just vanishes. Poof.
So, as these business models began to crumble, the effect on the workforce became absolutely devastating. And this wasn't some one-time shock. It became a self-reinforcing downward spiral for white-collar workers. And this created a really bizarre economic paradox that the memo calls ghost GDP. See, on paper, productivity was booming. A single AI cluster could do the work of 10,000 people. But that output wasn't flowing back into the economy through paychecks. The money was being made, sure, but it wasn't circulating. The human part of the consumer economy just started to wither.
This slide just visualizes that vicious cycle perfectly. As AI gets better, more white-collar workers are laid off. Those displaced workers, and even the ones who still have jobs but are scared for the future, they spend less money. Well, that hurts company revenues, forcing them to cut even more costs by, you guessed it, investing more in AI. And the loop just keeps going, with no natural break.
This is what makes it so personal.
The memo tells this story of a product manager at Salesforce making $180,000 a year who gets laid off and ends up driving for Uber, making just $45,000. Now, when you multiply that by hundreds of thousands of people, it's not just a personal tragedy, it's massive economy-wide wage compression.
And the sheer scale of this shift is just staggering. In the 4 years of this fictional crisis, labor's share of GDP, that's the slice of the economic pie that goes to workers' wages, it plummets to just 46%. That is the sharpest and fastest decline on record. It represents a massive transfer of wealth from labor to the owners of capital and compute.
For a while, the market kind of treated this as a sectoral problem. Software was in trouble, sure, but the broader economy seemed okay. But eventually, the rot in the real economy infected the financial system, and that's when a bad recession turned into a full-blown systemic crisis. A huge vulnerability was hiding in plain sight: the private credit market. It had absolutely exploded in size, growing to over $2.5 trillion. And a huge chunk of that money was lent to software companies, all based on the assumption that their subscription revenue would just keep growing forever.
The Zendesk default was the smoking gun. This deal was built on its annual recurring revenue, the predictable income from subscriptions. But AI customer service agents made that revenue not so recurring anymore. So when the biggest software deal in private credit history went belly up, every lender started asking the same terrifying question: what else is built on assumptions that are no longer true?
And that's what the fictional Fed chair called it. The entire financial system, from private credit to the insurance companies funding it, had become one giant correlated bet that the value of white-collar work would just keep going up. And when that bet went bad, the whole daisy chain started to unravel. This led to the ultimate, terrifying question. The bedrock of the entire global financial system is the $13 trillion U.S. mortgage market. It's all built on the assumption that prime borrowers, people with good jobs, will keep paying their loans. But what happens when those good jobs are structurally broken? For the first time, the system had to seriously ask if prime mortgages were still a safe asset.
And that brings us to the end of the memo from 2028. The crisis has exposed a fundamental shift in the economy, and society is now in a desperate race against time to figure out how to adapt.
And this brings us to the core thesis of the whole thing. The entire crisis is the unwinding of the intelligence premium. For all of history, human intelligence was the scarce, valuable ingredient in our economy. But as machine intelligence becomes abundant and cheap, the economy is violently repricing the value of human thought itself.
And this is the final, brilliant twist. The memo breaks the fourth wall, pulling us out of the future and right back into our present. The negative feedback loops haven't started yet. We still have time to assess the risks in our economy, in our portfolios, and as a society. This scenario, it isn't inevitable. The canary, as they say, is still alive.